Smith beating out 3 quarterbacks. The Alabama receiver last night won the Heisman Trophy. He led FBS this year in receptions, in receiving yards, in receiving touchdowns. He's just 6'1", 175, and last night he took a moment to address kids like him in his Heisman speech.
To all the young kids out there that's not the biggest, not the strongest, just keep pushing, because I'm not the biggest. I've been doubted a lot just because of my size. And really, it just comes down to you put your mind to it, you can do it. No job is too big. If you put your mind to it, you can do it, and just keep believing in God, and you'll get where you want to be.
He is the first wide receiver to win the Heisman Trophy since Desmond Howard, and if only we had Desmond Howard to react and give some thoughts on that. Oh, how nice. We have Desmond Howard.
We got Desmond Howard.
So Des, obviously, it was a great speech last night. It was a great moment, and he was well deserving. To beat the quarterbacks for this award, you have to sort of go over the top, and he clearly did that. So I wonder what your thoughts are as we sort of prepare for the draft process. What do you think he looks like to you at the next level? I'm asking for a friend.
I think he looks special at the next level. I mean, he's a guy he's a technical male. He's a dog. He has a crazy catch radius, very athletic, former hooper. Reminds me of Marvin Harrison. He's really smooth. When you see him, the first thing that jumps out your mind is, wow, he's a really smooth route runner. Like I said, great hand-eye coordination. And then Stevie Breaston body type, kind of long, kind of slender. They call him the Slim Reaper because he's out there taking bodies and
killing
snatching souls on the gridiron. So I think he's a combination of Marvin Harrison, Stevie Breaston, and the sky's the limit for this young man. Just an incredible talent. Like you said, Greeny, when you go into a competition like this and you beat out 3 quarterbacks, it speaks volumes to the talent that this young man has.
He is also from the state of Louisiana, which means somewhere along the line, Ryan Clark had to have coached him in something. That just seems to be, that always seems to be the case. Ryan, your thoughts?
Well, you're absolutely right. Listen, the name of the team is the Louisiana Bootleggers, and we have a 7-on-7 team. It's had Odell Beckham Jr., you've had Jarvis Landry, Dante Jackson, obviously. Now we're talking about DeVonta Smith, and Jimmy Smith, who runs the team, texted me talking about how many times he cried last night. But he spoke about him being a top 3 player on that team that's filled with first rounders. And it said that this award was more about the person DeVonta had always been than the actual player. And Desmond said all the reasons why he's special at the position. But you think about this, when he goes to this school, when he commits to Alabama, Jerry Jeudy commits there, Henry Ruggs commits there, and those guys go in the first round, and he waited his turn. He was good then, but now he's showing you that he is the best of the bunch. He continued to work, he continued to improve, and now he's the best player in the country. And from what I hear about DeVonta and what I know about him, he's always been the best person for that opportunity, and he showed you with his chances that he got at Alabama this year.
All right, a little later we'll talk about what might be the next step for him, which could potentially be a reunion with his former quarterback, Tua Tagovailoa in Miami, who have the 3rd pick. We'll talk about that as we go. But we have to then get to the championship game on Monday, because this is getting a tiny bit precarious. There have been some discussions about postponing the game because of COVID issues within Ohio State's program. I'm sure if you were anywhere near social media yesterday, you saw some of the conversation around that. So let us get to what is really going on by bringing in our college football reporter extraordinaire. There's Heather Dinich. Thank you for getting up with us. Heather, what do we know as of right now about the game Monday night?
Good morning, Greeny. CFP Executive Director Bill Hancock told me there have been no changes and the game is planned for January 11th, as it always has been. Gene Smith, Ohio State's athletic director, said the same thing, as did Alabama's athletic director and SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. So January 11th it is. I can tell you that a school spokesman at Ohio State told me that the Buckeyes are expected to land in Miami on Saturday at 6 p.m. They practiced on Tuesday. They continue their daily antigen testing. But as we know, COVID-19, it is a fluid situation. I reported last week the CFP's makeup date, should it need to be postponed, is January 18th.
All right, so that would be pushing it back a week should they need to do that again. As of right now, that is not the plan. What else do we need to know? I saw your reporting yesterday about specific protocols and things like that. I'm sure the fans are desperate to hear some of that. What can you tell us about the specific protocols that will ultimately determine whether the game is played Monday or not?
Greeny, before the season began, the CFP determined that, I'm going to look at my phone here because I got the document yesterday through a text, and it said an institution may postpone a game only if it has fewer than 53 roster players available to begin the game with the following minimum number of position players: 7 offensive linemen, 4 interior defensive linemen, and 1 quarterback. An institution may play with fewer than the threshold numbers of players if it elects to do so. So that is the CFP's threshold, which was instituted by the commissioners before the season.
So, really, like 18 minutes ago, we began this conversation talking about the Cleveland Browns and the idea that the NFL will not postpone the game for competitive reasons, only if it is deemed unsafe. And it feels like this is similar, right? I mean, Ohio State may wind up, we don't know, they may wind up playing this game significantly shorthanded, but that would not be what would determine whether it's played or not. Am I understanding that correctly?
Look, if the game is postponed, it's going to be postponed because Dr. Jim Borchers, their medical person who's been the point person for COVID-19, has said, look, we can't do this for one reason or another. But the threshold, as the CFP states it, was what I explained, and that obviously plays a role into it.
All right, so we'll wait and see. Again, this is not a first for Ohio State. They've had multiple games postponed over the course of the season. They have dealt with COVID issues a good deal. We thought maybe they had put that behind them as they worked their way through the Clemson game and the Big Ten championship game, which they had missed several of their good. The Browns will be without their head coach, Kevin Stefanski, among others, in their wild card playoff matchup against the Steelers on Sunday night. Stefanski testing positive for COVID-19, along with 2 other coaches and 2 players, sources have told ESPN. And the Browns have released a statement that reads, in part, our facility is currently closed while contact tracing is taking place. The team will continue to consult with the league and medical experts to determine the appropriate next steps as the health and safety of our players, coaches, staff, and the entire community remains our highest priority. Our contingency planning calls for special teams coordinator Mike Preifert to serve as the acting head coach. So we begin with our insider, Dan Graziano, who has been all over this story. What is the very latest the fans need to know as we look ahead to this game Sunday night?
Looking ahead, they reference the contact tracing, right? Everybody who's identified as a high-risk, close contact of the people who tested positive has to be away from the facility and the team for 5 days. However, that means those people could conceivably participate in Sunday in the playoff game because 5 days would get them back on Saturday in time for that. So assuming there are no further positive tests, it's conceivable the Browns could reopen their facility later today or tomorrow and get back to work. In terms of the possibility of the game being postponed, I know that's a question a lot of people have. That would require a continuation of positive tests, probably multiple per day, like we saw in Baltimore in late November when that game had to keep getting pushed back to ultimately a Wednesday. So obviously the hope is that that is not the case. So far, the contact tracing has revealed that that's probably not going to be the case, but we're going to continue to monitor the testing results today and tomorrow and Friday to make sure.
So again, to make it clear for the fans who I'm sure are wondering this, the protocols, the policies remain the same in the playoffs as the regular season,
Yes.
which would mean that even if the Browns wind up playing this game significantly shorthanded on the field as well as the sideline, the game will go on.
They will not postpone a game for competitive reasons, only for health and safety reasons. If they deem it unsafe for the Browns to assemble as a team, that's when they have to talk about postponement. If they're shorthanded at a position group or on the coaching staff, that's not enough to get a game postponed. Same, you're right, as in the regular season.
Okay, so again, I approach everything from the standpoint of a fan because that's all I've ever been. And all I can think of are those fans in Cleveland who have waited 18 years for the opportunity to see their team in the playoffs. And now this, I mean, it sort of breaks your heart a little tiny bit. Ryan Clark, I see you shaking your head. How would you describe the impact this has on their chances of winning the game?
This is a huge impact, Greeny. I don't know if there are 5 head coaches in the league who are more important to their team than Kevin Stefanski is. There hasn't been a Monday morning that Dan Orlowski, Rex Ryan, or I haven't come on this show and talked about how well Baker Mayfield played without tying it directly to Kevin Stefanski, his impact, his schematic mind, and also his play calling. That's every week we come in here saying Kevin Stefanski put Baker Mayfield in the best position to play good football. And when he plays good football, this team wins. And so not only are you losing a head coach, someone that delegates, understands the ebbs and the flows of the games and makes those huge decisions, but you're missing your play caller that's directly tied to the success of your offense, which has elevated this team to a playoff team for the first time in 18 years. This is a huge deal. This is worth points, and the Cleveland Browns have to figure out a way to bridge that gap without having their head coach and play caller there.
Absolutely. And Dominique, you were making the point this morning that this is just not something NFL teams are accustomed to having to deal with.
Right. I mean, we know how to deal with having a player out because players are out often. Having coaches out is a new thing. That just started this season, so they can't be ready for it. And I think the in-game decisions as far as like going for it on 4th down or when we go for 2 and those types of things, like that is science mostly. Like you can put together a sheet to tell people when the right time to do those things are. But game planning and calling plays and also adjusting in-game. That's a science. That's something that you get used to doing. There's a process that you follow when you adjust to things that you see the defense that the defense has done, and you see opportunities. That is a science. You can't just put somebody in there and tell them, well, if this happens, then this happens. It's not that simple. They're going to have a hard time bouncing back from losing the coach, not just because of his play calling, but because they're going to need to adjust. And playoff games are more about coaching than anything, any other regular season game. So the coaches are going to be at a vast disadvantage, which puts the players also at a disadvantage.
Right, and again, we'll wait and see as the tests continue to come in today and the rest of the week if any further players are affected by this. But Desmond, just without the head coach himself, and again, as RC and Neek said, the play caller, how big a deal is this to you as far as the Browns, your hometown team, having a chance to win this Sunday night?
Yeah, I feel sorry for the Browns fans because they've been waiting for this for so long, and then this opportunity presents itself, and now they have this hurdle to try to overcome it. The guy said it right. When you look at your head coaches, Mister, let's just keep this in context. Stefanski is a guy who's on the short list for Coach of the Year. I mean, that's the type of job he's done this season. When you have that conversation, his name is in the conversation. So it lets you know just how important he is to the success of the Cleveland Browns. And then when you connect him to Baker Mayfield, this guy who we've seen struggle, and we know, okay, this might be the answer. This is the coach that can get him on the right track, make him look like the player we saw in Oklahoma when he won the Heisman, and now you remove him from the equation totally. Then now you wonder, okay, is Baker Mayfield going to revert back to the guy who was making mistakes and had you scratch your head like, what was he looking at? Or is he going to be able to forge ahead? And number two, you have a head coach that makes gut-like decisions during a game. The guys can tell you, Neek and RC, the playoff is a completely different season, and things tighten up a little bit, and you have to be on point. So without Stefanski, this is a huge loss for the Cleveland Browns.
And here they go to Pittsburgh against their arch rival on the road. Feels like everything working against them. We're going to go live to Cleveland as we continue. We'll have much more on this story and this game.